Hello everyone, I'm the Devi and this is my first video on YouTube. Welcome to my channel, the Devi Until. The mural was created for a competitive art event, painted live at Sanskriti 2025, the prestigious cultural fest of Jadavpur University, hosted by FETSU. It was a great opportunity and I am truly thankful to the FETSU team for organizing this mural competition. This was a 7-day solo grind, now compressed in one video. Let's see how I fought the graffiti war frame by frame. This is the wall I ended up choosing for my piece. Some of the walls already had colors on them from last year paintings, so it was kind of first come first served.
The theme of the graffiti war was open, so I chose to speak about something personal and powerful: women empowerment. I titled the mural "Courage in the Name of Judgment." The piece is inspired by a digital artwork I found on Pinterest, and I reimagined it on the wall with my own vision, style, and meaning. Before you start painting a wall, here are some simple but important tips that made a big difference in my process. First, always clean the wall properly using an old cloth. Dust can mess with how your paint sticks. If you need proportions, you can draw a grid using chalk or charcoal. But if you're confident, just dive in with a brush and some brown acrylic to outline directly. When using acrylics, go easy on the water. Too much water leads to dripping and you'll lose control of your colors. Handle your brushes and paints carefully. A little rush can ruin your details, and the wall isn't like paper, so every stroke counts. For sharp, crispy edges, masking tape is a game changer. I used it for borders and clean outlines, super effective. I used Asian paint 50 ml gloss cans for the mural. Small, but if you plan well, it's enough. To clean brushes or thin the gloss paint, I used tarpon oil. And if you're using acrylic colors, you can mix in just a little water and some white glue to stretch the quantity. Throughout the video, I'll be sharing more steps and tricks as I paint, and if I miss anything, feel free to drop a comment. I'll make a short just to answer it. Let's get started. Alright, now that the prep is done, let's jump into the actual mural making process. What you're about to see is 7 days of non-stop painting condensed into one time lapse. I've kept most of the key parts in, so you'll see the ups, downs, challenges, and changes along the way. If you notice anything specific, like how I blend colors, switch tools, or fix mistakes, feel free to pause and drop your questions in the comments. As you're watching the time-lapse from day 3, let me take you back for a moment and explain what happened on day 1, since I couldn't record that part. So, the first thing I did was outline all the characters on the wall using chalk. It was a tricky decision, because the mural area was right in an open auditorium, and there were continuous onstage competitions happening nearby. I was honestly worried that someone might brush up against the wall, or the outlines would get smudged or wiped off, and if that happened, I'd have a really hard time redoing the layout. So instead of working on small elements, I focused day 1 entirely on the background structure and the main outline of the composition, just to lock everything in place before moving on to painting. It wasn't the most exciting part visually, but it was the foundation for everything you'll see next. Let me take you back to what happened on day 2, probably one of the most challenging and personal parts of this journey. That day, I started working on the main character, the girl at the center of the piece. I began with her skin tone, hair, eyes, and lips. Since this was my first time painting on a wall, I was honestly nervous, not just about the artwork, but also the setup. The wall was well primered, but right in the center, there was a switchboard. I had to carefully incorporate it into the design and cover it up, so it wouldn't break the flow of the painting. Being a solo participant made everything harder. I had to carry all my materials out at once and couldn't leave them unattended, because the auditorium was crowded all day with people coming and going for different competitions. I couldn't even go to the washroom or take proper breaks until a friend of mine, who was also participating, got the wall right beside mine. Thanks to them, I finally got to step away for a bit. Painting solo in such an event means you're not just the artist, you're also your own assistant, cleaner, and time manager. No breaks, just back-to-back hours till evening. But I kept telling myself this hard work will pay off. On the technical side, that day I finished the first layer of the girl's features and began blocking in her shirt and base colors. Since I was using Asian paint gloss, I couldn't apply layers instantly. It takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours to dry, depending on the wall and weather. So instead of blending, I focused on creating contrast using flat tones, separating light and dark areas clearly. Next, I taped around the girl with masking tape and newspaper to start working on the red circular clock in the background. I was extremely careful with the brush strokes here. One mistake, and I'd have to repaint major areas. As parts of the paint dried, I added line work in the hair, golden flowers, and started placing the Roman numerals on the clock, all while building mood and depth into the piece. That was all for day 2, physically exhausting, mentally demanding, but one of the most rewarding days of this project. This part was harder than it looks. I had to redo the shadows twice. At this point, I ran out of paint and had to adjust the color mix. Here's where I used masking tape to get that crisp circular glow. This flower outline took way more patience than expected. As you're watching this time-lapse of day 3, you'll notice something? I had to redo a few parts, especially the shadows and color tones. Why? Because I wasn't happy. It didn't feel alive yet. I wanted the girl in the painting, my central character, to carry emotion. So I pushed myself to make her more vibrant, more real, even if it meant painting the same part twice. The biggest challenge? I didn't have access to a wide range of shades. All I had were basic colors: white, black, blue, red, yellow, and brown, all from cheap Asian paint gloss cans. No fancy kits. No expensive tools. Just the basics. So I started mixing everything by hand, trying to create smooth gradients, soft shadows, and bold highlights. But blending with gloss paint is hard. It's thick, oily, and dries unevenly. Add too much oil and it becomes transparent. Add too little and the brush won't move. But I took that as a challenge, because I wanted this to be proof that you don't need expensive materials to create something powerful. Paintbrush art isn't about what you have, it's about what you do with what you've got. So slowly, stroke by stroke, I achieved the tones I was looking for. That day, I finally completed the girl's full outfit: her shirt, pants, belt, and the small details like the gun and the flower woven into her dress. Every fold, every wrinkle, painted with purpose. Each part of her clothing took time. Because I wasn't just painting fabric, I was building a message. A character that speaks without words. After that, I started working on the goblin's eyes, twisted, judgmental, watching her, trying to pull her down. But she stood tall, strong, calm, looking beyond them. That's when the story truly started coming together. It became more than just a mural, it became a message. The gloss paint caught the light in such a way that the wall literally glowed. It looked like it had life, like it wanted to speak. Speed balloon, I am the storm the world tried to hide. But I rise anyway. And while I was painting, I was alone. No team. No background music. No one cheering me on. There were moments I doubted if I could finish. Moments I looked around and saw other groups working in sync, while I stood there, brushing quietly, questioning if I'd ever get recognized. But I kept going. Because that's what this mural is about, pushing through silence to express your voice. This piece is not just for me, it's for anyone who has ever felt judged, ignored, or overlooked. It's for the dreamers who don't have the tools but have the fire. It's for the ones who fight their battles alone and still show up. So if you've made it this far in the video, thank you. You're not just watching a mural, you're witnessing a journey. And I hope by the end, you feel a part of it too. Glowing Star, we don't paint to impress the world. We paint to express the parts of ourselves the world never saw. Stick with me. The storm's just beginning. Day 4 was different. After days of intense focus, silence, and solo work, something changed. The wall finally started speaking back. I began the day by painting the blue sky in the background, giving life to the space around my main character. And then, right above her head, I added the message she carries boldly. I am the storm. This wasn't just a line, it was her voice, and maybe even mine. What made this day extra special was that my mom and sister came to visit. For the first time, I wasn't alone in front of the wall, I had my family standing with me, watching my process live. They've seen me sketch, paint, doubt, and dream, but this time, they saw me take a stand on a public wall with a message bigger than myself. My sister, who's also an artist, joined in too. I asked her to help with color filling, and it turned into such a joyful, shared experience, the kind you remember even after the event ends. There were also many visitors that day, students, passers-by, and random strangers stopping by, taking photos, asking questions. And as a growing artist, it felt amazing to see people engaging with my work, not just looking at the art, but feeling the energy behind it. Then I moved on to something important, the message. I started adding the final touches to the goblins, who represent society, the critics, the judgments, the stereotypes. One of them shouts, "You can't withstand the storm." But she, the girl, the storm herself, rises in silence and says, "I am the storm." It became clear to me that this mural wasn't just a painting, it was a conversation. Between fear and strength. Between silence and resistance. Day 4 reminded me why I do this, not just to prove something, but to express something. And to feel that connection, with my family, with strangers, and with myself, that was the most beautiful part of the day. They said you can't withstand the storm. She whispered back, "I am the storm." Sometimes, art becomes even more meaningful when it's shared. This part of the mural was painted by my sister, an artist herself. She came to support me, and I asked her to fill in some colors. It wasn't about perfection, it was about creating something together. It reminded me that even when you're painting solo, you're never truly alone. The people who believe in you, they become part of your story. As my sister helped fill in colors on the wall, something magical was happening just a few steps away. One of my seniors was performing live on stage for the solo singing competition, right in the same auditorium. The music, the brushstrokes, the atmosphere, everything blended into a moment I'll never forget. So I've kept the full song in this video. Not just as background, but as a reminder of how powerful creative energy can be when it all comes together. That performance really filled the air with emotion. It reminded me that art isn't just about what you create, it's about what surrounds you while you create it. The people, the energy, the music, it all becomes part of the mural. That was day 4, a day filled with color, connection, and a little bit of magic. Day 5 was all about shadows, not just in terms of paint, but also in the story. This was the day I began shaping the background characters, the goblins, the figures of power, and those who try to silence the storm. To build that contrast, I worked on the background using a mix of black and white to create ash tones, a muted gray that helped set the mood. This ash tone became my base for shadows, as well as the texture of the dark robes worn by these haunting characters. Artist palette technique-wise, I approached it almost like glazing. First, I laid down the shadows in darker tones, marking where the light wouldn't reach. Then, using a very thin layer of oil mixed into my gloss color, I gently glazed over the surfaces. This made the background slightly dim and foggy, letting the light bounce off the central figure, making her pop out even more. The more oil I added, the more transparent the paint became. It acted like a film. But it required patience. Too much oil and the color would slide or disappear. Too little and the texture would feel heavy. I also started working on the goblins' costumes and faces, brown tones, textured strokes, and controlled detailing. Each character represents a piece of society, and their clothing and positions in the mural are carefully designed. This figure represents social manipulation, grabbing at her, trying to hold her back. Dressed in rags, with sharp ears and twisted posture, it shows how society often tries to claim women's choices under the mask of tradition or concern. This figure is ritualistic patriarchy, aged, stubborn, and silent, watching from the shadows. He doesn't speak, but his gaze is heavy, like a judge who doesn't question the rules but enforces them. This one is the embodiment of power structures, law, rules, systems that shame or silence. Look closely, and you'll see the word authority painted on the cloak, because authority, when blind, becomes oppression. This character whispers, "You can't withstand the storm." He represents doubt, gaslighting, and fear-mongering voices that come not just from outside, but sometimes from within. But in the middle of all that, she stands glowing, bold, unapologetic. The background characters aren't random, they're a wall of judgment. That's why I used dim, earthy tones, kept their details raw, and used glazing to push them into the background, like shadows always trying to catch up. And her? She's not just in color, she's surrounded by light. The red circle, the Roman numerals, the golden floral outlines, they're like a force field. She doesn't fight them with weapons. She resists with presence. Day 5 was heavy technically and emotionally. I had to sculpt each shadow, control each highlight, and constantly balance detail with depth. And slowly, layer by layer, the painting began to feel complete, not because it was done, but because it had started to breathe. Day 6 felt like tying all the threads together. The mural had form, depth, and character, but now, it was time to define it. So I started with the final outlines, adding in all the small details, refining edges, darkening shadows, and bringing sharpness to expressions. Each line I drew wasn't just a border, it was a pulse. It gave clarity to the characters, the folds of clothing, the contrast between the bold girl and the murky goblins. But the most meaningful part of Day 6 was adding the sacred Sanskrit shloka at the bottom. A message to the viewer, and a tribute to the spirit I was trying to capture in the painting. Devi Sarva Bhuteshu. Bhranti Rupena Samsthita. Namastasiai Namastasiai. Namastasiai Namo Nama. This is a verse from the Devi Mahatmyam, a Sanskrit hymn that praises the many forms of the divine feminine, the goddess who lives in all beings. And in this specific verse, the line Bhranti Rupena means, to the goddess who exists in all beings as delusion or confusion, we bow to you again and again. It's powerful, because it acknowledges not only strength, wisdom, and beauty in the feminine, but also chaos, illusion, and transformation. In the context of my mural, this line speaks to the judgment the girl faces, the shadows society projects onto her, and yet, the divine feminine exists even within those distortions. By writing this shloka at the base of the mural, I wanted the painting to ground itself in cultural roots. Not just as a modern message of empowerment, but as something that's always been part of our philosophy, that the feminine is everywhere. In pain, in power, in peace, in protest. To keep it accessible and still traditional, I used a Sanskrit verse written in English letters. So even those who don't read Devanagari could still feel the vibration of the mantra. Because this piece isn't just for one audience, it's for everyone who's ever felt judged, misunderstood, or silenced. Day 6 was meditative. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was quiet work with deep meaning. I wasn't just painting letters, I was inviting divinity into the piece. By the end of that day, the mural had a spine, a soul, and a voice. The story behind this artwork? The girl, courage in the face of judgment. At the heart of the mural stands a young woman, bold, radiant, and unyielding. Her back is slightly turned, but her face is lifted, eyes locked onto the stars, like she's not just looking at the sky. She's claiming her place within it. She wears color like armor, an orange shirt glowing with energy, a deep blue skirt grounded in clarity, a belt blooming with red flowers. Each shade speaking louder than any word. This is no ordinary girl. She is every woman who's ever been silenced, shadowed, or shamed. But still chose to stand. To rise. To glow. Above her head, the words curve like a battle cry. I am the storm. She doesn't run from the voices. She becomes the answer. Surrounding her are goblin-like figures, distorted, monstrous, and twisted. Their faces are carved with contempt, fear, authority, symbols of a society that tries to shrink powerful women into silence. One grabs at her belt, trying to hold her back, representing manipulation and possessiveness. Another looms in silence, draped in tradition, symbolizing ritualistic patriarchy. One screams, "You can't withstand the storm," the gaslighting of power structures. The largest bears the word authority, a direct critique of institutions that use rules to suppress truth. But none of them succeed. The girl doesn't fight back with violence. She doesn't plead. She simply exists boldly, fully, freely, and that is her act of defiance. Behind her is a massive circle, a radiant clock glowing with golden roses and Roman numerals, marking the passage of every hour of struggle. It symbolizes the 24 hours of resilience that women live through every single day. The circle is her halo, her shield, and her time now. Even in the shadows, she carries beauty, in the form of soft golden floral outlines, whispering of grace, patience, and untold stories. And anchoring the mural is a sacred Sanskrit verse. Devi Sarva Bhuteshu. A divine invocation, reminding us that the goddess lives in all forms. Even confusion, illusion, and chaos. Because power takes many forms, and even in darkness, there is divinity. This mural is more than art. It's a mirror to the world and a message to every viewer. You can try to silence her. But she is the storm and she will rise anyway. Day 7, the final day. Not just the end of painting a wall, but the completion of a journey. By now, the mural had become something more than color and lines. It had become a story, one that people could feel. And on this day many did. Visitors started arriving. Some were curious, others were moved. People stood in front of the wall, taking photos, reading the message, pointing out details, and just being present with the art. I captured a few clips, not for validation, but to remember the moment the mural became bigger than me. From day 1's blank wall to day 7's finished vision, every moment was a challenge. Working solo, managing materials, improvising with cheap colors, painting while competitions echoed in the auditorium. But seeing people interact with the final piece made all of it worth it. And somewhere in the crowd, I stood, not just as the artist, but as someone who had poured everything into this one story. A story of defiance, beauty, struggle, and power. This wasn't just a mural for a competition. It was my way of saying something I've always believed in. You don't need permission to be powerful. You just need the courage to paint your truth, even when the world tries to erase it. I captured a few clips, not for validation, but to remember the moment the mural became bigger than me. From day one's blank wall to day seven's finished vision, every moment was a challenge. Working solo, managing materials, improvising with cheap colors, painting while competitions echoed in the auditorium. But seeing people connect with the final piece made all of it worth it. And the most beautiful part? This mural won third position at the competition. Among group entries, teams of 5, and countless other works, this solo-painted wall made space for itself. That moment of recognition wasn't just about winning. It was a reminder that even when you're working alone, your voice matters. Thank you for watching this 7-day journey. If this mural meant something to you, do share your thoughts in the comments. And if I missed any part you want to learn more about, let me know. I'll make a short on it soon. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. This is Judgmental. Until next time, keep creating. Where it started. Just a bare, faded wall in the corner of an open auditorium. No colors, no meaning, just potential waiting to be claimed. Now, this is where we are. After 7 days of sweat, paint, planning, mistakes, layers, patience, the wall has become a voice. A story. A storm. From scattered chalk outlines to deep colors and golden light, every corner now holds a message. And most importantly, it's no longer just my wall. It belongs to everyone who stood in front of it and felt something. You don't need a perfect canvas. You just need a reason to start. And the courage to finish. Thank you for watching this 7-day journey. If this mural meant something to you, do share your thoughts in the comments. And if I missed any part you want to learn more about, let me know. I'll make a short on it soon. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. This is Judgmental. Until next time, keep creating.